In the past two videos, we have learned how to graph quadratic equations. In this section, we are going to learn how to solve quadratic equations. A quadratic equation is an equation that can be written in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, where a does not equal 0. This is called the standard form of an equation. Before, we were graphing these quadratic functions in standard form. But now a solution to an equation, a quadratic equation, these solutions are often called x-intercepts, roots, or zeros. So all three of those mean the same thing. And you'll see all three. A question could ask, what is the x-intercept of a quadratic equation? What are the roots of a quadratic equation? Or what are the zeros? So any three of those we would need to know. The solutions are at the x-intercepts because y is equal to 0. That's how we're going to end up solving for these. There are three possibilities for solutions. There's no solutions. So that is when y never actually reaches 0. So the x-axis overlaps with the function y equals 0. Well, for this quadratic U-shaped curve, it never crosses the x-axis. Y is never equal to 0. Then the other possibility is one solution, and that is when it intersects with the x-axis just once. So just down here. The third possibility, and what will occur most often, is two solutions. That is when we cross the x-axis twice. So we cross the x-axis here, and then we cross the x-axis again. So, as we already said, we are looking where the graph crosses the x-axis. What points go through the x-axis? Because y is equal to 0 on the x-axis. So we are looking for the x-intercepts. So let's go through this example where we are actually going to graph quadratic functions and determine what the zeros are. So the question asks, what are the solutions of each equation? So this time they didn't even use the word zeros or roots or x-intercepts, but that's what they're looking for. When they're saying what are the solutions, they're looking for the x-intercepts. Use the graph of the related function, which we are going to graph, and then sketch the graph and show the solutions. So we are going to graph these on Desmos. So if you go to if you just Google Desmos, most of you are familiar with Desmos. We've had assignments on Desmos. So go to Desmos, and then we're going to click on graphing. You can also download the Desmos app. So now we are going to go to Desmos to graph x squared minus 1. Okay, so now I'm on the graphing function of desmos.com, or you can use the app. But either way, we are going to type in x, and then we need x squared. So what we're going to look at is there's an a raised to the second here. That's what we're going to press, a squared. So now we have x squared, and we want x squared minus 1. The example on the video had x squared minus 1 equals 0. We don't want to put equals 0 because if we do, this is what's going to happen. Okay, we do not want to put equals 0. So let's delete that. We just want x squared minus 1. So now we have a U-shaped curve. That's what we wanted. And if we look at this, we have gray dots here. We could click on every single one of those. And then those are the points that we can graph on our notes. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to plot -1, 0, 0, -1, and 1, 0 on the notes. So let's graph those. -1, 0, 0, -1, and 1, 0. And our graph should look like the graph on Desmos. But either way, you can notice here that there are 2 points that overlap with the x-axis. Those 2 points are the x-intercepts, -1, 0, and 1, 0. So because we're worried about the x-intercepts, we're only going to write down x equals -1 and x equals 1. We took the x values from the points. Those are our solutions. So now let's do the next one. The next one is x squared equals 0. Again, we're going to graph that on Desmos. So to get rid of this graph, I'm just going to click the x to get rid of it. And then we have x, and we're going to raise it to the second power, x squared. So if you notice here, there's only 1 point that we can click on. That is the only point that crosses the x-axis. So we only have 1 solution here. And if we wanted to get other points to graph on our line, if you notice here, we do have -1, 0. You can actually move this and look at all the different points. But -1, 1 is a point. 1, 1 is also a point. So we're going to plot all 3 of those. -1, 1, 0, 0, and 1, 1. So let's plot those. -1, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1. Connect the points. We have a U-shaped curve. The only place it overlaps with the x-axis is at the point 0, 0. So our solution is x equals 0. We take the x value, and that is our solution. So this last one, to save us time, I am going to plot the points, but you are able to graph this on Desmos. This is now a valid way to graph a quadratic function. You can use Desmos. So now we have -1, 2 is a point, 1, 1, or 0, 1, and then 2, 1. I said that in reverse. So let's go over those points again. You have -1, 2, 0, 1, and then 1, 2. And connect the points. If you notice here, we don't cross this x-axis at all. And that's always what we were looking at. We were always trying to figure out where it crosses the x-axis. In this case, there's nowhere. So our answer for this one is no solution. So on your lesson check, you are able to use Desmos to find these solutions. We will also learn how to solve them algebraically. That is the next example. So what are the solutions? What are the zeros? What are the roots? What are the x-intercepts? All of those mean the same thing. We are solving this equation. So we have 3x squared minus 75 is equal to 0. Well, to solve for x, that's our goal. We want to get this x by itself. It's similar to balancing an equation. The x squared makes it a little bit more challenging, but we still subtract or add the 75 to both sides. So that gives us 3x squared is equal to 75. And then to get x squared by itself, we divide both sides by 3. So all of this is just like balancing an equation. But now we have x squared is equal to 25. So to get rid of an exponent, we're going to take the root. So to get rid of the exponent of 2, we're going to take the square root of both sides. But when we take the square root of both sides, it's very important that we have a positive and a negative. And I'll tell you why in a second. But taking the square root gets rid of the exponent of 2. And then we have x is equal to, the plus or minus doesn't go away. And then you think about the square root of 25. The square root of 25 is 5. So we have a positive 5 or a negative 5. And if we were to plug that back into the function, we would get 0. The reason why we have a positive and a negative is because if we were to take a positive 5 squared, we would get 25. If we were to take negative 5 and square it, we would still get 25. So that's why we need the plus or minus. Always remember the plus or minus. So now let's talk about the next example. We'll go through this one. We have 3x squared plus 27 is equal to 0. We're going to solve for x squared, so that means get rid of the 27 first. Let's subtract that over. We have 3x squared is equal to negative 27. Divide by 3 to get x squared by itself. You have x squared is equal to negative 9. To get rid of the exponent of 2, we take the square root of both sides. But now, even if you were to get your calculator out, try taking the square root of negative 9. If you do that on your calculator, most likely you received an error. And that is because it is not possible to take the square root of a negative number. So this is going to be no solution. And with that, you should be able to go through the lesson check following what you learned in this video.